Can you take a look at this? Is this blood?
This happened a few years ago and it still confuses the hell out of me. So I'm out at the movies one night with my father and his friends. They were pretty big guys, think tough, drunk, and Irish. The theater was one of those multiplexes in a gigantic shopping mall plaza, but it was 10 p.m. in the middle of the week, so the lot was pretty vacant. To pass the time before the movie started, we walked around to the much more secluded side entrance, where movie patrons usually exit a theater to smoke cigarettes and talk loudly. We were just shooting the shit when a boy, couldn't have been much older than 10 years old, approached us by himself. "Excuse me, can you take a look at something for me?" He looked really scared. As someone who had previously suffered from a slight panic disorder, I could sort of sense the fear in his eyes. The way he was wringing his hands, the way he was insistent, etc. Now, my dad and his friend, they weren't ones for empathy, so they took one look at the kid and said something like, "What do you want?" But I said, "Sure." He walks me around the corner of the building, and the whole time I'm acutely aware of how bizarre this whole thing is. As we round the corner, I notice that, thankfully, my dad and his friend are tailing, albeit at a distance. The boy leads me to another side of the building, and there stands a disheveled middle-aged man beside the spotlight in the ground. I don't know how best to describe it. Kind of like a pool light, but really bright. On top of the light is a bright red substance that looks to be just paint. The boy looks at me panicked. "Is that blood?" he asks. My father and his friend are now there. They gruffly reply, "No, that's not blood," before stumbling off back towards where we were originally standing. I don't know why I did, but I stayed behind, and he pressed me. "Please, just look at it." This kid was having some sort of freak out, and I said, "No, that doesn't look like blood to me. I think that's just paint. Maybe there was some work here and they spilled some on the light." I'm legitimately trying to calm the kid down because the situation is kind of sad to me. The kid isn't biting. "No, please, look at it." At this point, I turn to the man he was with, thinking this has to be embarrassing to him. I try and convey, "Some night, huh?" with a shrug, and he just smiles at me, like a weird smile. I don't know how to describe it. Kind of dopey, with eyes that weren't all there. Whatever it was, it set off a serious red alarm in my head, and I started to back away. "Can you look at it, please?" Seriously, I wish this was an exaggeration. He was really insistent that I look at it again and again. So as I'm backing away, I calmly say to the kid, "Why don't you ask your father there? I'm sure he knows what it is." Then all the panic left his voice and he said, "He's not my father." I look at the man again and he's still giving me this fucking smile. I told the kid one last time not to worry about it and walked back over to my father and his friend, seriously creeped out. They, however, didn't seem to care at all and just sort of brushed it off as if it was nothing. To this day, I have no idea what the hell that was about, and I worry that the kid was trying to alert me to something with that guy. At first, I thought they were from a group home or something, but that didn't make any sense because the kid seemed lucid. And who the hell lets adults out with kids at this hour of the night from a group home? Where was the aide? I then thought, okay, what if the kid was special needs and the guy was his aide? Well, that went out the window because the kid, while acting really strange, didn't seem to be mentally challenged. And if the guy was the aide, why the hell wasn't he getting involved? Would love some theories on this.
He knew my name.
So a few people asked me to post another of my stories from my time working private security and the let's not meet moments I had. This happened about 2 years ago. It's the last and final private security gig I've had. It's also what made me say fuck it and join my dad up in the Pacific Northwest. So I worked out in Beverly Hills, California. I was a guard at a luxury community. This place was the creme de la creme. They had strict policies in place as far as security went. That didn't stop paparazzi or other strange folk from trying to get in, but we would more often than not cut them off at the knees. There was no less than 4 of us on patrol at any given time, 2 at the guard shack watching the folks entering, and 2 running patrol in a golf cart. One night we were short-staffed. There was just myself and Big D. D was huge. He was a former bouncer and had one time been a bodyguard for Britney Spears. He had to use the restroom, so he decided to go on patrol and then run by the clubhouse to use the facility. So I'm chilling in the guard shack, which was actually a pretty nice little office, when our phone rings. Now the only people that could call into us were residents or someone calling from the clubhouse or pool area. I answer and nothing, just heavy breathing. I look to see who is calling. It's the clubhouse. I think it's D fucking around. I tell him to go fuck himself and hang up. Few minutes go by and I'm flipping through my manga. Phone rings again. Clubhouse. I answer it and tell D to finish his shit and come back. Heavy breathing and then a raspy voice. That's not nice, Nate. It's not D, because I see him coming back in the golf cart. Now I'm petrified who the fuck is calling. The voice creepily giggles and then hangs up. I toss my manga and fly out the door. I tell D what happened and how the dude knew my name. D thinks I'm fucking around because we often play jokes on each other, and he says he will go check it out. I tell him he better call our boss, but he rolls his eyes and tells me he will be right back. Besides, he never got to use the restroom. So I go back into the shack and I try to calm down, and the phone rings. I don't want to answer it, but I do. It's more heavy breathing. I had enough. I called our boss, who bitched about it, but came down. D, meanwhile, gets back and the dude looks like he saw a ghost. He tells us he's in the restroom in the clubhouse and someone comes in as he is going to the bathroom. They don't say anything, just heavy breathing. They get into the stall next to him, and just as he is flushing, he looks up and some man wearing a mask covering his eyes and most of his face is just staring at him with the most peculiar grin. D screams as he pulls on his pants and the guy books it. Our boss wrote it off as a teenager playing a prank. He wouldn't let us call the cops. He said it must be a resident who knows my name as we do wear badges. I wanted to quit, but I didn't that night. But the next weekend I'm at work. D is in the booth with me and we are talking about the Lakers game when the phone rings. D answers it and says it's for you. I take it thinking who would ask for me, and I answer. Nothing for a second, then that horrible breathing. I look at D, and then the phone. I hang up. We tell the other 2 guards to stay there, and we take off for the clubhouse. We get there and it's quiet, start going through the game room, and then the kitchen, and we peek into both bathrooms and nothing. Then we get radioed that one of the others saw a figure jumping over the wall. The walls were pretty high, and they said he or she scaled it with no problem. We call the cops as we are supposed to do if someone gets in, and they come and sweep the area. Meanwhile, one of my coworkers finds a notebook outside the clubhouse, like it fell out of someone's pocket. It was one of those small lined notebooks with the pages that tear out. In it, someone had written not only my full name, but every security officer that worked there's name and our home address. After learning that, I quit. I was making good money and I liked my coworkers, but knowing he or she knew my name and where I lived made my decision to quit and move up to where my dad lived much easier. From what I've heard from D and former coworkers, they only heard from Heavy Breathing Man one more time, but it was enough that 3 more of them quit, including D. My former boss and the police think it was a former coworker, but they haven't figured out who or if it was. So whoever you are, let's not meet ever. Names have been changed.
Creepy guy in the shadows.
This happened literally 20 minutes ago. I live in a small town and frequently walk the back roads to a store about a quarter-mile away without incident. I could take the main roads, but there's much more traffic and I prefer the quietness of the back roads. Tonight, as I was making my way to the store, I was nearing the darkest point on the street when I heard a rustling in the bushes. It's usually just rabbits or a fox, but I pulled out my pocket knife just in case it was a stray dog or something that might attack me out of fear. No sooner did I reach for my knife, I hear footsteps quickly closing in on me. As I was approaching the street I needed to turn left on, I looked behind me to check for traffic and caught a glimpse of a tall man running in my direction. I'm a small female. I quickly crossed the street onto one with much more light, and dude did an about-face turn and ran in the other direction. I wasn't even as scared about possibly having to defend myself in that moment as I was about if I had been 5 steps slower without my knife in hand. Knowing my kids were expecting me back home in less than 10 minutes, what would have happened? I definitely walked the main road back home. Now, I always make sure that if I am walking alone at night, to always have a knife in my hand inside my jacket pocket. Creepy dude in the shadows. Let's never meet.